Examples of international solidarity in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic continue as China donated medical supplies to Africa and Cuba, while Vietnam has donated 550,000 masks to 5 European countries. China has reported no new deaths due to the novel coronavirus over the past 24 hours and just 32 new cases. New York continues to be the epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak in the United States, with almost 139,000 confirmed coronavirus cases. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. Another shipment of Chinese medical supplies arrived in Accra, the capital of Ghana, on Monday and will be distributed to 17 other African countries within a few days. The Chinese ambassador to Ghana, Wang Shiting, said that China's current efforts show its commitment to its relations with Africa and further strengthen historic ties. Since the novel coronavirus arrived in Africa, China has overcome its own difficulties to actively assist the African Union and African countries with medical supplies and organise video conferences for medical experts to share their experiences. The urgently required shipment of vital supplies includes personal protective equipment, masks and protective suits. And China's first donation of medical supplies for Cuba's fight against the COVID-19 virus arrived to the island this Tuesday. China's ambassador to Cuba, Chen Shi, and Cuban Deputy Minister of Health, Luis Fernando Navarro, officially received the supplies at the Ministry of Public Health in Havana. The Chinese donation includes face masks, infrared thermometers, and protective suits to fight the COVID-19 epidemic. 10,000 suits and the same number of masks were donated by Yongtong, a Chinese transport company with a significant presence in Cuba. Vietnam has donated 550,000 masks to 5 European countries to support their fight against the novel coronavirus. The masks were handed to the ambassadors of France, Germany, Italy, Spain and Britain in Hanoi, according to the Vietnamese Foreign Ministry. Vietnam has reported almost 250 COVID-19 cases, but no fatalities. The country has also donated masks and medical equipment to other countries, including China, Cambodia and Laos. Vietnam has asked its mask producers to step up their production in order to make 5 million masks a day. This Tuesday, China reported no new deaths due to the novel coronavirus over the past 24 hours and just 32 new cases, all involving people who returned to the country from overseas. Another 12 suspected COVID-19 cases, also all imported, were being kept under observation, along with an additional 30 asymptomatic cases.
Currently, the domestic epidemic has been sporadic in recent days, while the epidemic in Europe and America is still developing fast. The number of existing imported cases has surpassed the domestic existing number, which has brought pressure to the cities of entries in medical treatment, epidemic investigation, nucleic acid tests, and isolation facilities.
Meanwhile, Chinese authorities are moving to lift an 11-week lockdown of Wuhan, allowing residents to once again travel in and out of the city where the coronavirus pandemic began. Wuhan was put on lockdown on January 23rd as the epidemic intensified, but with the situation now largely under control, authorities are set to restart outbound travel services from the capital of Hubei province on Wednesday. However, residents will only be allowed to travel outside of the city and Hubei province if they have a green health code, which indicates they are symptom-free. Likewise, the re-establishment of business operations in Wuhan will be subject to the health risks identified in each area, according to local authorities. Since the start of the coronavirus outbreak, people from all around China have been voluntarily working in Wuhan to help combat the epidemic. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe declared a month-long state of emergency on Tuesday for Tokyo and 6 other prefectures in order to ramp up measures against the spread of the coronavirus as the number of cases surges. But the move came in the form of a stay-at-home request, and people who do not comply will not be penalised. The state of emergency in force until May 6 will only permit the governor of Tokyo and heads of the 6 other prefectures to do more to reinforce calls for social distancing. Nationwide, Japan has reported 92 COVID-19 deaths and over 3,900 confirmed cases.
Under these circumstances, I have determined that this is a situation where there is a concern that a rapid and widespread infection nationwide may cause significant impact to the livelihoods of people and the economy. We declare a state of emergency based on the provisions of Article 32, Paragraph 1 of the revised Special Measures Against Novel Influenza.
Spain this Tuesday reported a rise in the daily number of confirmed coronavirus cases and deaths for the first time in 5 days. However, this result is consistent with previous Tuesdays when a weekend backlog of tests and fatalities are reported. With 743 new fatalities over the last 24 hours, Spain's death toll neared 13,800, according to Health Ministry data. The total number of confirmed cases rose to over 140,000. Authorities have stressed that flattening the curve of the epidemic will be a long process, but the easing pressure on hospitals, especially in emergency wards, has raised some hopes. As part of de-escalating measures being debated for the coming weeks, the Spanish government wants to test 30,000 households to draw up a national map of the outbreak. The goal is to measure how far the virus has spread beyond hospitals and nursing homes, which had become major sites of contagion. The Cabinet is expected to approve new measures to cushion the economic and social impact of the pandemic, including subsidies for farmers and flexibility to temporarily hire migrant workers to harvest fruits and vegetables. Hundreds of Greek healthcare workers mobilised on Tuesday to protest their working conditions and a lack of personnel and equipment in public hospitals to face the coronavirus pandemic. The demonstrations were staged to coincide with World Health Day, according to the Federation of Public Hospital Workers. Protests were held outside more than a dozen hospitals, organised by the National Hospital Doctors Union. The union president, Despina Tusunidu, stressed that in addition to the hiring of more medical staff, intensive care units in private clinics should be requisitioned to overcome the shortcomings of the public sector during the health crisis. Public healthcare in Greece was drastically affected by the country's 2010 to 2018 financial crisis and tough austerity measures imposed by creditors in exchange for bailouts. Greece's coronavirus death toll reached 81 on Tuesday. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has announced a €400 billion package of additional economic aid for small, medium and large Italian companies struggling in the wake of the novel coronavirus. The aid will be administered as loans through banks and is aimed at boosting both the domestic economy and exports. Italy's number of new coronavirus cases has continued to drop. It has now reported over 135,000 cases, while the death toll surpasses 16,500.
We have provided the country with a very effective tool to protect all companies that carry out some activity of even minimal strategic importance in our country, by imposing also new obligations of financial transparency. In particular, we have strengthened the instrument that is technically called the Golden Power. Through it, we will therefore be able to control what are possibly hostile corporate operations, hostile takeovers, not only in the traditional sectors, such as critical defense infrastructures, but also in the finance, banking and insurance sectors. We extended it to energy, transportation, water, health and food safety too, and artificial intelligence, robotics and cybersecurity.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson remains in an intensive care unit but has not been put on a ventilator. Our correspondent in the UK, Pablo Navarrete, brings us more details.
Taken to intensive care of a London hospital at approximately 8 p.m. local time last night after his health situation deteriorated. Now we know that Boris Johnson announced recently that he had coronavirus or COVID-19, and he had sent a message on Twitter on Friday saying that he still had some of the symptoms, namely a fever, but that he seemed to be on the mend now. This situation has taken a turn for the worse, and he is not on a ventilator, we understand, although he is being helped with oxygen. Now, according to some medical reports, those that enter the intensive care have around a 50% chance of surviving, although, as I said, they've said that Johnson hasn't been put on a ventilator. Now, the Foreign Minister, Dominic Raab, has taken effective control of the government, although it has been said that the decisions are being made collectively by the Cabinet. Now the death rate in Britain and the UK continues to rise. The last figures we have show that 439 people died in a 24-hour period, taking the number of dead to over 5,300. A recent article in the Squawkbox website has suggested that according to Office of National Statistic figures, the real death rate for hospital deaths is in fact more than 78% higher than that.
More stories coming up after this short break, including on the mounting crisis in the United States. So don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. New York continues to be the epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak in the United States, with more than 138,000 confirmed coronavirus cases, as State Governor Andrew Cuomo confirmed on Tuesday. The number of new hospital admissions in the state has almost doubled.
Is 5,489 New Yorkers have lost their lives to this virus. That is up from 4,758. That is the largest single-day increase. And we talk about numbers, but that's 731 people who we lost. Behind every one of those numbers is an individual, is a family, is a mother, is a father, is a sister, is a brother. So a lot of pain.
According to Johns Hopkins University, which has been keeping a tally of coronavirus numbers, the US has reported more than 368,000 COVID-19 cases and over 11,000 deaths. The United States has emerged as one of the world's worst hit nations, with a steadily increasing number of fatalities and millions facing the possibility of economic ruin. Authorities began the week by telling frightened communities to brace for one of the worst periods yet in an outbreak that has not yet reached its peak. Cuban health authorities reported 46 new COVID-19 cases on Tuesday, bringing the total number of positive cases to 396, while there have been 11 deaths. Meanwhile, Chile and Ecuador continue to be among the worst affected countries in the Latin American region. Chile has reported over 5,000 cases, while Ecuador has confirmed 3,700. Peru has reported over 2,500 cases and has seen 92 deaths, while the death toll in Mexico rose to 125, with over 2,400 confirmed cases. According to Johns Hopkins University, these countries are followed on the American continent by Panama and Argentina, with 2,100 cases and 1,628 cases, respectively. Both Panama and Argentina have reported 55 fatalities. Brazil continues to be the worst affected country in the whole of Latin America by the coronavirus pandemic. As President Jair Bolsonaro calls on the population to return to work, the number of confirmed cases and fatalities continues to rise. Our correspondent Brian Mayer has the details.
24-hour period recorded the number of coronavirus cases that have been confirmed by the Brazilian government rose to 12,200. This represents around an 8% increase over the previous day, which appears to be a slowdown in the rate that transmission is increasing. However, Health Minister Luis Mandetta said that the public should not pay that much attention to these numbers because the real numbers are much higher because they're having logistical bottlenecks and problems with their testing. Now, his statement is supported by what a lot of public health officials are saying. Dr. Margaret Malcomo from Fiocruz Institute said last week in an interview that she believes the real numbers are probably 10 times higher based on the number of hospital internations for pneumonia that are happening right now nationwide. There was some drama in Brasilia yesterday as far-right President Jair Bolsonaro announced on Twitter he was going to get rid of his health minister, Luis Mandetta, who's polling twice as high as the president in the polls. Over the course of the afternoon, all of the big Brazilian newspapers started saying that Mandetta's downfall was imminent, that there was going to be a press conference at 5 and Bolsonaro was going to announce Mandetta's resignation. 5 o'clock came and went. When the press conference started, Mandetta walked into the room, calm as could be, and announced that he wasn't going anywhere, he's staying on. And so afterwards, some of the Brazilian newspapers and news outlets like UOL are speculating that the military have isolated Bolsonaro and that they're now running the coronavirus response.
Rural organisations in Bolivia have organised the distribution of fruits and vegetables in the central city of Cochabamba in the midst of the coronavirus epidemic. The 6 federations of the Tropic of Cochabamba, the rural organisations that represent cocoa growers and others in the tropical Chapari region of Bolivia, came up with the initiative as an act of solidarity with the most vulnerable families in the area. At least 15 vehicles arrived to the city, and in coordination with the authorities, they will distribute the food in the metropolitan area of Cochabamba.
With solidarity and the voluntary contribution that the Tropic has with the subject of products, we can reach different provinces, including different departments of the country, and therefore always show that willingness, that affection that is all about being solidar people, as we have been taught by our great leaders such as Evo Morales as well as Fidel Castro from Cuba. I think through these very difficult moments, the most overrated is the subject of solidarity.
Former President of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, denounced his conviction by a top court on corruption charges. Correa was accused of bribery and sentenced to 8 years in prison and a 25-year ban on participation in the political life of the country. He has denied the charges, claiming they represent a political witch hunt. Immediately after the sentencing, Correa stressed that he was confident that eventually his supporters would triumph at the international level. Also sentenced were former Vice President Jorge Glass and 16 others who were also found guilty of bribery and sentenced to 8 years behind bars. And we're taking one last break now, but stay with us for more. Welcome back to From the South. The Prime Minister of Cambodia on Tuesday said that he's ordering a ban on exports of rice and fish to ensure there are no local shortages during the coronavirus crisis. Prime Minister Hun Sen said he wanted to make sure there was a sufficient supply of salt and noodles as well. He appealed to Cambodians to plant vegetables and other crops to supply local markets during this difficult time. Expensive gourmet varieties of rice that Cambodia has contracts to sell abroad are exempted from the export ban. The Prime Minister also announced that the Cambodian New Year holiday, scheduled for April 13th to 16th, has been cancelled to reduce the risk of people spreading the COVID-19 virus. Cambodia has so far confirmed 115 positive cases, but no fatalities have been reported. The African continent has now confirmed more than 10,000 cases of the novel coronavirus. The figure was released by the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. 52 of Africa's 54 countries have now reported the presence of the virus, with the island nation of Sao Tome and Principe the latest to confirm cases. Only the small kingdom of Lesotho and the island nation of the Comoros remain virus-free. South Africa has the most cases on the continent at more than 1,700. The shortage of testing capabilities across Africa has raised concerns that the real number of cases could be much higher. Despite the coronavirus pandemic and a call for a global ceasefire, the conflict in Syria continues. A US Army officer and 2 members of the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces were killed and others injured during an ambush north of Deir ez-Zor, the largest city in eastern Syria, located 280 miles east of the capital Damascus. Sources confirmed that the attack was orchestrated by unknown persons from an American Hummer vehicle. At the same time, a checkpoint of the SDF was attacked by an unknown armed group. The Syrian Democratic Forces is a military organization based in northeast Syria and supported by the United States, opposed to the Syrian government. Australian Catholic Cardinal George Pell was released from prison on Tuesday, hours after Australia's High Court quashed his conviction for child sex abuse. The ruling brought one of the most high-profile paedophilia cases faced by the Catholic Church to an abrupt end. The court overturned 5 counts of sexually abusing 2 13-year-old choir boys in the 1990s. A jury had convicted Pell of the offences in December 2018, and that decision was upheld by a 3-judge panel in Victoria State's Court of Appeal last August in a split 2-1 verdict. A victim advocate said she was mystified by the ruling, which was wrong and unfair. This Tuesday marks World Health Day, the anniversary of the establishment of the World Health Organization. In the midst of the novel coronavirus pandemic, WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus referred to the lessons that must be drawn from this health crisis.
One of the lessons I hope the world learns from COVID-19 is that we must invest in nurses and midwives. It shows that 80% of the world's nurses work in countries making up just half of the world's population. Although the number of nurses globally increased by 4.7 million between 2013 and 2018, the world is facing a global shortfall of 5.9 million nurses, especially in Africa, Southeast Asia, the Eastern Mediterranean, and some parts of Latin America. We're calling on countries with shortages of nurses to increase the number of nurses they graduate by an average of 8% each year, and to implement measures to improve the employment and retention of nurses in the health system.
And to mark World Health Day, we finished this news brief with a video dedicated to celebrating the work of nurses and midwives and reminding world leaders of the critical role they play in keeping the world healthy. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.